introduction. Again, my name is Milan. I've been working with STRV for the last almost 2 years. And I'll talk about ECMAScript 6 and 7 and all the new features that these standards introduced to STRV. Sorry, to JavaScript. It did also introduce some things in STRV as well, so I wasn't wrong. So let's start. First, I'm gonna briefly explain about the let and const keywords. These are new keywords in ECMAScript 6. And the difference, how they differentiate with the var keyword is false. There were at least two types of scopes in JavaScript before the let keyword. And there was the function scope and the global scope. And now let introduces another scope, which is the block scope. So for example, if you see the example here on the slide, this one over here on the left hand side from your side, we're using the var keyword within an if statement, and this is perfectly legal, so it will still return the value 5 in case the is working variable is true or truthy in a sense. That's because there is no block scope when you use the var keyword. So it doesn't understand that it's in a different block. Because what JavaScript does, it hoists the variable on top of the function. And then when the assignment comes, it just assigns it and returns it. If this was false, it will return undefined. So without let's jump into an example really quick. So this is the same example that you saw previously, and if I run this, just give me a sec. Okay, so the console log is 4. It returned correctly. However, if I use the let keyword, it should throw an error, and yes, it does. So it says hours is not defined because it could not find hours. That's one difference, and it's good because now they won't be like if you have a longer function, it won't be messy, and you won't worry about variable hoisting like before. Let's talk about the const keyword. And const keyword is not a new keyword in JavaScript. It was there before. However, now with JavaScript, with ECMAScript 6, there is a different behavior. And the behavior is that once you have a constant assigned, in order to you cannot override it. So basically, it will throw an error. And before, it was just ignoring it. So that's one small addition. And if we run the same example, again, we'll have a error that says assignment to constant variable. Okay, and I forgot to tell you, if you guys have any questions or anything, just interrupt me and shout away. So those are the two let and const keywords. Moving on, we have template literals, and this is a very handy way of string concatenation, and it's definitely in some already in some programming languages, and it's already in JavaScript as well. So let's see how that works, and I definitely found it really useful in my basically day-to-day work. And if I just open templates, okay. So I have a function here that takes in a name and a weird parameter, which I'll explain a bit later. And then it just sums the number of hours. And just think of this as an array for now, because I am calling the for each method on it. So it's an array. And then I'm just returning the string that the name has worked for some amount of hours. And you can imagine that you might be building a query string, for example. So it could be much longer than this. And this is, in my opinion, at least, and I hope you will agree, kind of clunky and ugly to do. But if we run it, no doubt there will be an output. Unexpected token. Okay, and just 1 second. It should be something like this. Okay, so this is the what it logged. And just to tell you about this variable, it's also something new in ECMAScript 6, and it's called REST parameter. What it does, you can, once you have this, you can assign a variable, you can pass any number of parameters you want within the function. So if you see it here, I'm passing the name, and then I'm passing all these different numbers or hours. And then from the name from here, these will be packaged up into an array, and it will be sent through here. So that's just a side note. The problem is that it's still not natively supported in Node, and you need to use the -- harmony flag. So that's it. Let's go back to the template literals. If I remove all this, I can have a shorter syntax starting with a backtick, and that's this sign. So it's not a single quote, it's a backtick. And the way it works, I have something here that I'll copy. I'm building a string that has the variable name, and then I'm just continuing to type the string as I want, and then again with a $sign and opening and closing curly brackets, I'm using the variables that I want to plug into the string. And this is just a normal string, and in runtime it evaluates as we saw before. So just to show that it is a normal string, if I hit dot, I have all the methods and properties that we usually have on a string. But this is definitely a shorter syntax and a nicer looking way of string concatenation. Okay, so that's template literals. That's how they're called. And moving on, we have classes. And is anybody coming from any other programming language than JavaScript? Okay, good. So, which ones? PHP. Anything else? Okay, good. So, you're already familiar with classes, but if somebody is not familiar with classes, this is the shortest definition in the world. It's a blueprint for creating objects. And even though there were objects before in JavaScript, the classes provide a nicer looking syntax for creating those. And basically, as it says on the slide, it abstracts away the complexities of creating objects otherwise, so in the past. And classes can have constructor functions, methods, fields, and properties. And let's just dive into an example. So here I have a person class. It has a constructor function that takes in a name, and then this name is assigned to a private variable. It's not private, but it's something that belongs to the object. And it also has a do work function. So the way you use this class is as follows. So if I create a variable person, I can say new person, and I can pass in the name. So I'm passing in the name here, and I'm assigning it to this local variable. And once I call do work, so I can say person dot, and now do work method is there. Let's see what happens. So it says, obviously, the name is working. So again, constructor function and a method. These methods, do not belong to the object. They belong to the prototype of the object. So if you create 1 million of these, then they will all share do work function, which is very efficient. So it's only one copy of the function. However, this .name variable, it is copied into all those 1 million objects that you created. So just as a side note. Classes also support properties, and we have JavaScript has getters and setters as well. And again, if you're coming from any other programming language, this should feel familiar. So the way you create a getter, it's starting with get, and then the name of the property, but then you use it as a function. So you have the parentheses there. And I'll just return this .name. And I can just use it like this. And see, the name is there as property. And you can imagine like you would do some logic here, like you can check the length of the name or whether it has a capital starting letter or something like that. So it's very handy. And if I run this, obviously the same, because, oh, sorry, that shouldn't be the case. Ah, I didn't save. Okay, so just have the name. Also setters, and they start with set. And I would like to set this name, but set it to what? So this setter takes in a value that it's passed in. So if I say person.name gets something else, now on this line, this setter is called, and I'm assigning the value to name. Let's see what happens. So now the name is something else. Or, yeah, so, but then when I call it, when I get it, for example, I can say to uppercase, and there is no autocomplete. So there you go. That's classes. Any questions as of now?
What about namespaces?
Sorry?
Namespaces.
Namespaces. JavaScript, to be honest, I don't know whether it supports namespaces. And it doesn't. Like, guys, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Robert is. It has nothing like. It's nothing like a strongly typed language. Like, for example, you said PHP. It does not support namespaces. It supports modules, so you can export this class from this file, and you can, for something like this, and this is not. We will not cover modules now, but, and then when you use this classes.js somewhere, you can say, for example, so this is the only, like, I would say this is the only modularizing in JavaScript, so you cannot use namespace. You cannot say namespace dot person get something. So yeah, I'll just remove this. And moving on.
Can I ask also a question?
Yes.
Is there any significant performance loss for using the string literals over the computations of the string?
No, because under the hood, I believe that it's just using the normal plus, plus concatenation. So it's just like a syntax sugar on top of the old implementation. And
so, because I know that in PHP you have some significant, not significant, but some performance loss because it performs the lookup of the literals.
right.
That does not happen in JavaScript.
I have to say I don't know, but let's meet later and let's find out. I'm not 100% sure about this, and I wouldn't want to say something that it's incorrect. So yeah, but I'll definitely look into that. How exactly does it under the hood? And that's a valid point. Okay, moving on. Arrow functions. And everybody has a favorite feature in JavaScript, and many of the people here, at least in STRV, they love arrow functions. And they provide us very concise and short syntax of defining functions. And if you see the function on the slide, it's basically a function that takes in two parameters, x and y, and returns the sum of those two parameters. And even though it's not very intuitive here, I will actually show you why it's this. So if you go into an example with arrow, and I already have this here, I'm just going to change really quick to a usual function. So I'm calling for each on the numbers array, and then I'm assigning I on every iteration. And the sum should be node arrow node.js 12. Arrow functions, you can with arrow functions you can basically remove the function keyword, and again it's a syntax sugar. So and there is one other difference which I'll point out. So if I remove the function keyword and I remove the parentheses, then I have to just say I have to use the fat arrow or the arrow or the, I don't know, lambda operator, some people call it, and I'll say given I, get me return the, basically just get me the add I to the sum. That's what I'm saying here. And if it's only one line, I don't even need these curly brackets. So I can just do this. Just like that. And it should work. Again, 12. In case, and I will just take this out. In case there are multiple parameters that you want to pass in, you do have to use the parentheses. So if I'm passing in x and y, I'll say x plus y. So now I have to use it. If I'm not passing any parameters, then I have only the empty parentheses, and it's mandatory. So then I can say whatever. I can return this. If I'm using multi-line, then, so if it's only one liner, I don't even need to use the return keyword or the curly brackets. But if it's multi-line, then I have to, for example, I don't know, I have then I need to use the return as well. Oopsie. Like this. Any questions on arrow functions? It's clear? If it's not clear, guys, you can meet me later. We can maybe go through the examples again and also find out about your question over there. So, yeah. Okay. Moving on, we have the for-of loop in ECMAScript 6. And so technically now, JavaScript has 3 for loops. The traditional for loop with an index, the for in loop that returns the index of the array, and now the for-of loop, which returns the actual value of the array. So let's see how that works. And I said everybody has like a special, like a favorite syntax in JavaScript, and this is my favorite in ECMAScript 6. It really, I'm definitely using it often. So if you go to for-of, we have a array of numbers, and then what am I doing there? I'm summing all the numbers and returning the sum. So this is the new syntax introduced in ECMAScript 6. So it says for num of numbers, and this num will actually contain the value. So in the first iteration it will be 2, second 4. If I said as before, and this is not new, for in numbers, let number in numbers, it will return the indexes, so 0, 1, 2, 3. But the of returns the actual value. So note for of.js, it's 77 apparently. So that's the for of loop. Any questions there? I do think it's kind of self-explanatory. Okay, moving on. Generators. Is anybody familiar with generators? Very good. You guys help me out. So with generators, let me just go back to the... So generators allow the... It's just a function that can return multiple values. And it's famous or infamous for doing the least amount of work possible. So, and you have to just tell it, okay, get me the next value, and then get me the next value. And then the execution just continues from the caller back to the generator and forth. So and I'll show you in action. So basically it behaves like a state machine. When it returns the first value, then you can do whatever you want with that value. Once you call the second value, then it remembers that it returned the first value, so it says, okay, now I'll return the second one. It has a special function syntax, and let's see how those work. So here I have a generator function. The special syntax I was talking about is the star that comes right after the function keyword, and obviously this is the name of the function. And then the yield keyword. And the yield keyword, it's similar to return. It returns value 1, and then it yields high, and then it yields some object. So basically you can yield whatever you want, just because it's JavaScript. And the way you use it, it's like this. So you basically call the generator, and it creates an object that has a next method. When I call the next method, execution goes into the generator. It says, okay, what's next? And it's 1 in the first case. And then it returns an object with a value 1 and a flag of done. And let's go through it, and let's see the example what I wrote here. So node generators.js. How can I? So generator, I'm creating the generator object, and then I'm calling next. The first time I call next, I log it. Second time I call next, I also log. And the third time, I also log. And the console log provides with the following result. So value of 1 in the first console log, done false. And then the second one is value of high and done false. And also the third one, its value, it's an object and done false. Which means the done flag tells us whether there is something else in the generator that it can yield. And in this case, it's basically false until the value is undefined, until there is no other yield statements in the generator. So if I call it once again, hopefully it will say done true. Otherwise, I want to know how to continue. Yes, so it says done true, and the value is undefined because it didn't find anything else to yield. And obviously this is ugly. I mean, you wouldn't say, okay, next, 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 like this. So obviously you can use a loop. And in order to use a loop, we can do something like a while next.done console.log next.value. Then and this should be not done. And in order not to be an infinite loop, I also have to call next again, so and assign it to the next. So I'll say next generator dot next. This looks like it should work. So let's see. So exactly, it works, but I'm only logging the value here. So next dot value, and it's 1, hi, and Milan. Also, I can do something like this in the generator. So I can say for yield I. So I just keep calling generator dot gen dot next until there are values that can be yielded. Once that's done, it remembers the state, so it says, okay, done is true, and basically this loop will finish. So let's try again. So again, we logged the values 10 times. And I have to say I didn't get generators at first, but once you kind of like get into it, it's really easy. It's really easy to comprehend. Yes.
Can you iterate it in the for of loop?
Yes, because generator technically returns an iterator, so you can.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. Exactly. Let's see. So if I say for let g of something like this you had in mind?
Yeah, I thought that without the next. Let's see, I don't know. I just would guess that you...
I don't know either, but you know what, that's all JavaScript it's all about, like experimenting. So gen.next is not a function. So probably not. Did you have something like this in mind?
I am missing.
Something like this?
Yeah.
So it worked. Yeah, so great. Thanks for that. The thing is that, yes, the for off loop technically works with generators, and technically you can create your own generators. Basically, if you have a class or an object that remembers the state, then you can just return to the caller every time they call next. So technically, yes, you can create your own generators, and the for off works under the hood with generators. That's it. And yeah, thank you for that. That's great.
Can I ask?
Yes.
If I understand well, so we can use generators instead of closures in some cases, because it remembers the variable state.
Instead of closures.
So when you have a closure and you want to remember some counter, for example,
Yeah.
you can create a generator instead of closure.
I'm not 100% sure, because I didn't come up with an example like with a situation where I had to do that. But generators, yes, they do remember the state, and if you need that type of behavior, then yes, I would say you can. You can. Yeah, they also they really work well with promises as well, so they complement each other, at least in the COA framework. So when I call, for example, yield on a promise, it actually returns the value. It doesn't return the promise, which is great. So you can write asynchronous code in a synchronous manner, which is very readable. And that brings me to promises, actually. Oh, okay, that was not a question. So promises. Anybody familiar with promises? Good. More. Oh yeah, Michal too. So yeah, basically promises, they are objects that represent an action that will be resolved sometime in the future, and they have 3 states: pending, actually it's fulfilled. It's not resolved. It's fulfilled and rejected. So and they do not wait for that operation for that I/O operation to finish. It can be a call over the network. It can be database query. It can be some file disk, read from the file disk, and they do not wait for that I/O operation to finish. So the execution just continues, but then the caller has to handle the situation when that's done. And that's basically the fulfilled or the resolved state. So if we go to promises, example, first of all, sorry for the chunks of code. I just wanted to kind of drive the point across that promises kind of come after a callback functions. And before, in order to handle something that is asynchronous in JavaScript, we had to use the callback approach. And for example, I have a function that says getOrder with an order ID, and then a done function. So when that's done, I am passing in an object with an order ID and a customer ID, hypothetically. And this function, so it can be a I/O operation, and it can take some amount of time. And in this case, it takes 1 second. So like an artificial delay. And then I have also a get customer, which is pretty much the same. I'm getting some customer ID, I'm doing some I operation, getting the customer, and I'm calling done when I'm done. And get company. And then here is where I'm calling it. See what happens? I mean, I'm getting get order with order ID 1, and I'm passing in a function that will take the order. So in that function, I do something with the order, and let's say I'm doing some check if there is a customer ID, then get the customer. I'm getting the customer, logging the customer, and then I'm checking if there is a company ID, I'm getting the company. So, and this can get even hairier than this. I mean, then you can start with, you might have some more complicated logic than just if company.customer ID, and then you get this callback hell, which is commonly known as, or the, I don't know, pyramid of doom, or the Christmas tree, depending on which, from which language you're coming from, I would say. And if we run this, it will work, I hope, from promises.js. So every second, I'm getting one of the objects. And I'm saying here at the end, got company. So it works fine. But this all can be replaced with I'll just uncomment it. With a promise-based approach. Excuse me. And I'm getting this, I have the same functions here. Get order, but instead of a callback, notice the done, it's not there. So I'm taking in the order ID, but then I am returning a promise that takes in a function that takes in 2 parameters, resolve and reject. And notice the arrow, it's an arrow function. And then when this is done, so after that 1 second, I am calling the resolve method. So these are methods. And when this is done, the promise will be resolved. And whoever called it will get this object here. Same goes for the get customer. It returns the promise, and get company also returns the promise. And the way you use it, it's like this. And so I'm getting on the order, and because this returns a promise, I have a then method after that takes in the order. And then after, because I need the customer ID to get the customer ID, I'm saying return get customer, and I'm passing in the customer ID. And I say return because this also returns the promise. The get customer returns the promise. So then I can chain another then to it. When this resolves, I'll get the customer. And then I'll return get company, which also returns the promise. And because it returns the promise, I can call the then again to it. And then do something with a company. So basically get company, and then I'll get company. At the end, I can also chain .catch. And if any of these fails, the catch function will catch it, and it will pass in the error, whatever happened. And if we run this, it should be basically the same behavior. The thing that I'm trying to, the point that I'm trying to make is that it is nicer looking syntax, and it is debatable, but to me it is nicer looking. You exactly know what's happening, and it's kind of like in a synchronous manner. So that's promises, and they are natively supported in Node now, from way before. And you have this promise object as well, so you don't have to use any packages or anything. There are many packages that you can use that give you some like some additional features, but you can use it without any packages. So that's it regarding promises. Any questions there?
Do you have any comparison between the, for example, Bluebird promises and the native promises?
I haven't done any profiling in this case, in this sense, but I've heard that the Bluebird is faster than the native promises. Yeah, and it might be true, to be honest. But to be honest, it depends. I'm using Bluebird. I'm not using the native promises because I'm having some additional things that I can use with the Bluebird package. And I'm using it because it's easier to use. Even though if somebody says it's slower, I would still use it because it's easier. I don't think that like nanoseconds will do any change, any difference.
If it's nanoseconds, then yes.
It's sorry, huh?
If it's nanoseconds, then yes. Milliseconds, then.
If it's milliseconds, like, yeah, a lot of milliseconds, then yeah, but it's not. It's not really. I'm pretty sure it's not. And I never got into it to test it. So, because it works as it is, and a lot of people are using it, so I wouldn't. Even if I find something that like, oh yeah, it's 4 nanoseconds slower, I don't care, because it's easier to use. Okay, and that brings us to ECMAScript 7 and the async and await. And if you don't like callback functions, you can use promises. If you don't like promises, then you can use async and await. And this will come with ECMAScript 7. And at the moment in STRV we have, I think, only one project that uses the ECMAScript 7 features and async and await. To be honest, for production, I would wait until it's released and it's natively supported, rather than transpiling using Babel, for example, or any other transpiler. If you're a front-end developer, you might use a tracer, I think it's called, to transpile ECMAScript 7 to some lower version. So with async and await, we have a asynchronous code in a synchronous way. And really quick, let's see it. It's a different project that I prepared for you guys. Oh, you can see my desktop, how embarrassing. Okay, so let's go with here. Let's try with this. So the async functions that will come in ECMAScript 7, they introduce async and await keywords. And basically what you can do is you can await a function that returns a promise. When the execution sees this await keyword, it starts this function, but it's not waiting for it to execute. It just goes back to the thread pool, or if some other job needs to be done, it goes there. So it's not waiting for it, but it also does not continue in this scope. So this foo console.log.foo promise.log will not be executed until this is resolved. And the way it works, this is a normal function that returns the promise, and it has, again, a timeout of 1 second, a delay of 1 second, and just resolves a string foo. When this is resolved, this variable here will receive foo as a string. So let's see if that works. I do have to change the so node. So there you go. It waited for 1 second. When it was resolved, I logged foo. And this is definitely a really nice addition that I'm looking forward with ECMAScript 7. This async keyword implicitly returns a promise. So then you can call this function, and you can use await on it. And it will await for all the awaits inside to be completed before this is completed. And this is something like this. So if we have let bar, await, I do have to use it in a function with the async keyword, but you get the point. So it can be used like this. Or, if you don't want to await, then you can say const foo gets to do something, but then the execution will continue because I'm not waiting for this to be completed. And once I want the result of it, I can say that result will get foo. I think this takes in an array. Something like this. So I can have 10 calls that are executing in parallel, and then I can just put all the promises here. And then when this is resolved, I'll get the result of all those promises. And I do have to say await here. So it's like this. I do need to be able to transpile this and show you. And it takes some commands that I don't know now. But this is the way you will use it with ECMAScript 7. Any questions on async and await? Sorry? Oh, like the catch. Yeah. Okay, so log error, like this. Like really easy to grasp, very easy to use, and it's just async in an asynchronous manner. And if you don't know how to use, don't know, like, or if you don't like to use callbacks or like the promise.then methods, you can use this and never go back to that once it's released. So just wait a bit. So yeah, and I think we're done. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope I was not too boring. If you guys have any questions, now you can ask, right? Yes?
You told about arrow functions.
Yeah.
And there was something about lexically binding this.
Right.
You didn't tell us.
I didn't say this. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So lexically binds this. Right. Arrow functions lexically binds to this reference. And what it means is that when I'm using arrow function, let's say I'm passing an arrow function within another function of a context of a class, of an object, let's say. I don't have to worry about the this reference because it will always point to the context in which I'm calling the arrow function. When before, you had to use the and this syntax is very familiar. Var self gets this. and then you keep this reference into the self variable in order not to use it when you're calling the function. But with arrow function, you can just use this within, and it will point to the correct context. Does that make any sense? Yeah. Okay, great. Cool. Okay, great. So, any other questions? Oh, okay. Yeah, anybody.
Okay, sorry. But one more question about the bindings. When you have the arrow function and let's say you want to bind to different contexts, you can still do this or not?
No.
No.
It will bind itself to that context in which it's called.
Okay, forever.
Forever. I don't know, maybe next version it won't, but I hope they won't change that because it will be massive problems with a lot of programs. So, yeah. But anywhere you see like var self gets this, that means that the person who wrote that wants to keep this reference into a variable. And you don't have to do that anymore. You can just say this anywhere within, if you're using arrow functions, anywhere within the program, and it will point to the correct context. And the question behind?
Have you already worked with symbols?
In day-to-day job, no, but I did some experimenting with symbols, and they're cool. You can have a real private variables when you use symbols. And if you really have to have this behavior. So symbols are really good because for variable names. And in order for you to be 100% sure that nobody will touch that private variable, you can use symbols to hide it, and even you will not know the exact name of that variable. But you can use properties, and then under the hood, it checks the name, and then assigns, and then returns, again, the correct variable. So, I haven't used it, but this is the use case that I think it's common with symbols.
And could I ask you how you can declare a singleton class? Do you use symbols for it?
Let me think. I'm not sure how would you use symbols to declare singleton.
Singleton is anti-pattern.
Anti-pattern. No, I'm not sure. I don't know what to answer to that, but probably you can. But I think singleton, you can make sure it's only one object created without symbols. So you don't have to go into complexities of symbols to create a singleton. If that was your question.
I'm asking because I have found one pattern that you use for declaration of singleton,
Mm-hmm.
and they use symbols.
Right.
And I would like to know if it's correct way or not.
I wouldn't use symbols. Why would I? I wouldn't. Look, I have to see how it's done, and now from the top of my head, I don't know why they would use symbols, but in order to create a singleton, you can make sure that it's only one of them created out there. So you can do some checks in the constructor, let's say, or anywhere else within the class without symbols. But if you
Regarding the singleton, you have to have a private constructor, and that's not possible in JavaScript so far. So I think it's not really possible. You could have a static function in class, that's okay, but there's no way to create a static constructor. So I think it's not possible.
right,
Or maybe you can throw an error in constructor.
you can.
Exception.
I think actually it's quite possible because if you return from a constructor a different object, then that object will be the result of calling the constructor with a new keyword. So you could possibly, like, if you create the instance for the first time, you save it outside of the constructor, and if you call the constructor again, then you check if that's present, and you just return that object.
Yes,
and you can have a
Thanks for that, Robert. Yeah, look, JavaScript is still, I think, work in progress, and it changed a lot. It changed a lot since it started, right? And with ECMAScript 6, it's the biggest change since JavaScript was founded. And definitely we cannot cover all of it now. But yeah, just to let you know, there is a lot of changes and syntax sugar, and every single time, on this presentation and when we rehearsed a few days ago, I just learned something new, and that's the case. I knew that for example, deals with iterators and generators. I didn't know that you can call it like that, and it's great. So under the hood, it calls next, 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 which is awesome. So there you go. We can basically talk, guys, later after this meetup if you guys have any questions. Otherwise, thank you very much.